Hey, what's up, comrades? Hope everyone's doing great. We're here to talk about an X-Men series called Kitty Pryde and Wolverine. It's fucking delightful. It sets up a lot of stuff for Kitty going forward. Like, she's such a fucking awesome character. But part of it is because of the stuff that happens here, which is kind of fucked up at the same time, but it's good. So it's a 6-part miniseries that ran in the 80s, 80-something, 84, I think. Anywho, so it starts off, Kitty's looking fly as fuck. She's got this cute outfit on, and she's been ice skating. She went to visit Chicago because she needed like a break after the whole Colossus thing, him being an asshole and such. And she comes home, she sees like a fancy car. Well, she goes to the bank her dad owns, right? Because he's a rich Jew. Based. But no joke, he does. So, oh, Lord. Oh man, it's never not funny. So she goes up, she left her key somewhere, so she can't get back in the bank, so she uses her phasing skill, which shocks the security guard. He's like, oh, I thought I locked the door up. She heads upstairs, she hears a bunch of people talking in her dad's office, and so she's about to like head in there when this big Japanese guy comes out, and like there's some back and forth. She's yelling at them, blah blah blah. Like these guys are clearly like some sort of gangsters or whatever. And so and then we meet this guy Ogun, who seems to kind of be in charge, but also maybe like a goon or not. Kitty's having a hard time kind of figuring it out. Anyway, her dad's like, oh, don't worry about it, just gotta do some stuff. In fact, I'm gonna go to a meeting with these guys. And Kitty's like, I'll come too. And they all laugh, and he's like, well, I gotta go to Japan or whatever, so you just go home and here's some money. He hands her like a whole wad of cash. And then he heads out with those guys to fly out to Japan. Of course, Kitty gets super concerned, and so calls a taxi and like follows her dad to the airport. And then she like sneaks onto the plane going to Japan and like hides out in the baggage compartment because she can like phase and stuff. And then after the plane takes off, she heads up and like falls asleep in one of the chairs. And this Japanese stewardess like finds her and is, she's like crying and having a hard time. And the Japanese stewardess is like, okay, well, we got to report you to authorities because you snuck onto this fucking plane somehow. You get that figured out. And so of course, when they land, Kitty's like, nope. And so she nopes out of there, phases out, and runs and gets on like a subway. And she knows Japanese because they were here, remember, fighting the kaiju or whatever. And so Professor X like taught them all Japanese. And so she's pretty fluent. So she's kind of getting around town, but she's wearing this like ridiculous outfit with like a pink shirt and like her little cute hat. And she's carrying like skates around, and it's like winter time, obviously still in Japan. But somehow she's able to track down the building, because the name of the guy is like Shigeami. And so she goes to his building and she uses her power of like flight, or her power to like, part of her like phasing power allows her to like move up and down in air, because she can like phase through. It's like bizarre, but that's how it works. So she sneaks into like this room and falls asleep, but then a maid finds her and freaks out, and a security guard comes by and like shoots at her, and she dives out and she leaves behind like her skates and everything, and she's freezing and it's like raining and stuff. And so she's like, oh, I gotta steal some money so I'm not like freezing to death. So she takes money from an ATM, but then the alarm goes off and it's camera, and she doesn't even get the money, and like the Japanese police are chasing her, and she ends up like in the sewer, and it's like just miserable. And then we come to the next morning after all this crazy nonsense, and she's just curled up on a ball like by a building like a homeless person. And she's like, oh, I gotta call. And so she goes to call the X-Men to kind of do whatever, and then Wolverine picks up, and then she slams in. She's like, oh, I'm so embarrassed, I can't deal with this. And then she sees her mug on the TV, and she's like, fuck. And so then she's like, okay, I gotta go see what's going on with my dad. So she heads back to the Shigeami building and sneaks up there. And when she gets there, she sees her dad talking to the Yakuza leader guy about laundering funds through her bank. And then she freaks the fuck out. She takes this into issue 2. And of course she freaks the fuck out. And so everyone's like, Kitty? What the fuck? And so they go to grab her, but she like uses some of her skills as an X-Men to like dodge past them and like punch the Shigeami guy and like yell at her dad, and then takes off. And then there's a whole thing with like this Ogun guy who is like, I'm going to take what I want. I just want that girl. I'll take her, and then everything else will be fine. And then the guy's like, sounds good. And then the Kitty's dad is like, no, you can't do anything with my daughter. I heard that word. And then Ogun like threatens him very intensely. Anyway, so Kitty's going through the building, running away. And then all of a sudden, this guy in like a red mask, Ogun, clearly like blows gas in her face. And he's like, ta-da. Meanwhile, in JFK Airport, we see Wolverine heading to Japan on business, right? So we go back to Kitty. She's standing in like a dark room with like lights, and this guy's like cutting up her clothes. he's wearing like a ninja outfit with like the red demon mask, and he's like cutting her hair and cutting her clothes off, and cuts her hair all the way down short, which is like gross, and then it like cuts her clothes off completely, and then with like a katana, and then there's like a demon mask, and there's all this crazy stuff, and then she imagines herself being a baby and then being trained as like a fighter by Ogun, essentially, right? This is like a mind fucking stuff going on. And then she's training to like fight and use a staff and use sai and use a katana and use martial arts and all this stuff. And like time's going by and she's like being not mind controlled, but like mind fucked essentially to be this warrior and whatnot. And then at the end of it all, she's like ready to go, and she picks up this mask, and then it's like Tokyo, like however, like a week. I think it ends up being like a week later. And then we see Shige Matsu and his men like go into the office, and there's a guy sitting there smoking a cigar, and they all shoot him, and then Wolverine like kills them all because it's Wolverine. And then the Shige Matsu guy's got some like lady assassins, and so Wolverine beats the shit out of them too. And then he's like says something about Kitty and where's he going, and it's like okay. So Shige Matsu contacts Ogun and tells him, and Ogun's like, I see, tell him to meet at this temple and we'll make it happen. And so then we see Kitty, who's like kneeling at his like little shrine dojo thing, and is like and then he commands the ninja, and he commands all these guys to like pop out of there and kill her. And so like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ninjas like attack her, and she beats shit out of all of them. And then it's like, hi, master, sensei, yada, yada, yada. And then Ogun's like, good, go to this temple and kill the man that's there. And she's like, hi. And so then he looks at this picture of him and Logan hanging out with a bunch of like geisha. What a grand old time. I'm like, oh, there's some shit going on there. Interesting. And that rolls us into issue number 3, where we start off with Yukio, I think is her name. She's like an on-again, off-again lover of Wolverine, sort of. She's also the friend of Storm from back in like when they were here in Japan before, and Storm got her like punk rock hairdo and such. Anyway, so Wolverine's standing on one of those badass like Japanese buildings that's like multi-layers or whatever, and then she attacks him, and he almost kills her because she came like from downwind or something, or upwind, so he couldn't smell her. And then they fuck presumably, and then they chit chat about why he's here, what's he doing. He goes down to this temple and gets attacked immediately, and he's dodging around and fighting, and then it ends up being Kitty, and so she's fighting him, and he kind of figures it out. He's like, wait a second, what's going on here? Because he's about to like stab her, and then that doesn't happen. And then he's like, she chases after him, and he's like hiding in garbage because she got him like pretty intensely. And this is like a Wolverine that's much more grounded, and like, yeah, he can heal from anything, but it doesn't mean he's like, like not like he doesn't need like a little restopotamus. Meanwhile, while that's going on, Yukio goes to find Shigematsu, and she finds like a drunk Kitty Pryde's dad, and then she finds like the big bruiser guy from like before, and she beats shit at him and like throws him out a window. But then like Kitty's dad comes out, and he ends up knocking both of them off the building, and Yukio is able to like save them so they don't die. Meanwhile, back with Wolverine and Kitty, she's chasing around with like the devil mask and stuff, and she goes to like the garbage pile he was hiding in, and then he's not there obviously, and so he ends up chasing her some more, and they get into like a fight with like nunchaku and like size, and it's fight. They're fighting on top of a train. It's all very good stuff. Yukio ends up, where is she going? She goes to the train yard as well, where Wolverine and Kitty are like fighting each other, and then they almost get hit by a train, but Wolverine dodges that away, and then Kitty like uses her her phase through capabilities, and then after that, Kitty like sneaks up behind Wolverine and stabs him. Oh no, what are we gonna do? It takes us into episode 4. Yukio has somehow drugged Kitty, so she's kind of knocked out, and she's racing to like one of Mariko's like family residences that Wolverine has access to, because he's like kind of her husband. And Wolverine's like in the back, like breathing heavily and like all stabbed up and stuff. And then Kitty's dad's like, what the fuck's happening? What's going on? Why is my daughter tied up? And like all this stuff. And Yuko's like, shut the fuck up. And then she pulls over on the side of the road and is screaming at him and is like, you need to shut the fuck up and you need to like chill. And then they see Kitty like break out of her bonds, because obviously. So Yukio chases after her, and we get like a little recall of the last events. And then her and Yukio like go at it. And Yukio does this like death maneuver where she like jumps to like her death at the edge of a cliff, and then tosses a bunch of like poisoned darts into the back of Kitty, that she doesn't phase for him because she's not prepped for that. And then Yukio gets blown back by the wind. It's kind of badass. And so then she fights Kitty some more until she passes out from the poison. Anyway, they get to this let's see, it's a clan, like Yashida, Marika. Okay, so they get there, and then Wolverine's like doing better, and her, Kitty's dad's like, what the fuck? And then Kitty she's having all these nightmares and dreams about Ogun and Wolverine and all this stuff, and they have a conversation about what happened and how Ogun imprinted himself on her and is trying to take over her psyche and stuff, and then Wolverine's gonna help her get better. So, they eat some sushi and chill and stuff, and then Wolverine tells a story about this. Is it Musashi? He talks about how Ogun was his sensei, that he turned on him because Ogun's a real asshole. Yeah, Musashi. So Musashi and Ogun met each other on a bridge, and they both wanted to cross, and then they were in a fight to the death to see who gets across, but they just stared at each other across this bridge, and they decided they were equally matched, and so neither of them would fight, and they both turned away. All right, that comes up later as well. So it's very good story writing. And so then what are we going to do? First thing we're going to do is Kitty's going to take she's going to do some Zen guarding. She's going to go to the backyard where there's big sand and rocks and stuff. And she's just going to rake for a while. Then Wolverine while she does that, Wolverine's arguing with Yukio about is there a possibility? Maybe he should kill Kitty, save her all the problems, blah, 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 blah. He doesn't. So he comes back out later as she's done a great job in the garden. And it's all right, you want to get better? Here's what you got to do. And he gives her the family sword for the clan Yoshida, and is just hold it up, and she holds it for 5 seconds or something, or 5 minutes, not even 5 minutes, and she's like, oh my gosh, it was so heavy, I can't believe it did it. And he's they argue, and then they go and jump in the cold water and swim around, and then she keeps trying, she keeps failing and crying and stuff, and Yukio's why don't you just get Professor X to do it? And there's a whole reasoning about it. No, Kitty's just call Professor X and fix me, and he's no, you have to defeat this on your own. Ogun's going to keep chasing after you unless you can break his bonds and all this good stuff. So at some point, we get the call from the X-Men number 185, where Professor X calls and tells him about James McDonald, or Jamie McDonald. Yeah, James McDonald, because Jamie Maddox is Multiple Man. We haven't found him yet. No, he was with Moira in one of these previous Uncanny X-Men. Anyway. So Wolverine freaks out and goes off and screams in the sky for Jamie, who raised him kind of as a child when he found him as a wild man in the woods and stuff, and then also about Storm and whatnot. And then later on, Kitty and Wolverine are running through the frozen snow, and she's talking about Storm, and he's and then she falls and wants to give up, and he's nope, and she's you have to help me. He's I don't have to help shit, you got to make a choice. And she's no, I'll die out here. And Wolverine's well, it's better you die here than corrupted by Ogun. So he gets back to the house, and Yukio is I'll go get him, go get her. Or the dad's oh, I can't believe you left my daughter to die, something. And then Yukio's I'm going to go get her. And then Kitty rolls up, and she's no, I'm fine. And then we get some fan service of her in a hot tub, which is nice. And then she realizes part of winning is giving up on losing or something. She's trying too hard to be successful instead of just allowing it. And so she's able to hold the sword for a whole day without trying. And then she goes and she throws the sword down next to Wolverine and runs off to the airport. And she's talking about how she's going to fly back to get Professor X to help her and whatnot. And we see her looking at a plane ticket back to New York, which takes us to issue number 5, where we start with Kitty didn't go to New York, obviously, because we have 2 more issues of this left. But she pops up in Shigematsu's office as a ghost ninja, and he spooks her real good and tells him to sell the rights to the bank and leave her father alone. And then she goes out and she's very excited about this, and so she's dancing in the air, and some helicopter sees her, and so she drops all the way down into the sewer and dresses herself up like a Japanese girl from the 1980s. And then thinks about everything that's going on and what she needs to do and fighting Ogun and stuff. Back over at Osan Miyaku, which is the temple palace or whatever that Wolverine's been shagging Yukio in. They talk about the moon and Kitty and everything, and then Kitty's dad freaks out again, and Yukio threatens to kill him again. It's so good. We then flip back. We then go to Mariko. Yeah, that's right, Mariko. And she's with Akiko, I think is her name. Let's see. Mariko, New York, blah, 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 blah. Mariko. Anyone? Oh, there it is. Akiko. Akiko's the girl that Wolverine saved, whose family got killed in the tsunami / dragon attack and whatnot, and then gave to Mariko to rise. So it's Akiko is essentially Wolverine and Mariko's daughter, because she has no other family members. And then Mariko's been raising her for the last several months as her daughter, and they're talking about her school, and Mariko's still hot as shit. And so they're just chatting about all that stuff and whatnot, and then laughing and talking about everything that's been going on with them. And then she hears something, and so they go off to see what's going on, and we see a dark figure in the background. Wolverine's on a plane the private Yoshida jet that he has access to, and they're flying to Tokyo essentially. And him and Kitty's dad get into an argument again, and Wolverine like shuts him the fuck down, and then Yukio talks about killing him or killing Kitty or whatever. And then over at the Yoshida residence, we get Ogun and his like demon guys or whatever. He goes to kill Lady Mariko when he doesn't, because she phases, because it's Kitty pretending to be Mariko. And then they start fighting, and then they go back and forth, and they're running around the building fighting and, talking about how well she's been trained and how good she's doing. And then Kitty goes to like save Mariko and Akiko as Ogun tries to fight with them, and like she gets them out the door, and then they start fighting some more, and they're kicking, and they crash through a window, and they're up on like a rooftop, like fighting and punching and kicking and whatnot. And eventually Kitty gets like overwhelmed. She's like, well, I guess this is when I die. And then Wolverine shows up, and he's like, I wouldn't do that if I were you, bub. Takes us to the last issue. So we pick up on the roof, and then we have the scene like with Musashi and Ogun because Ogun's like, I don't know, he's not immortal, but he's lived like hundreds of years for no discernible reason that we've been able to discover. Maybe because he imprints himself in other people and then like takes over their personalities, and so that like, perpetuates his lineage. I don't know. I felt like it was never like firmly addressed. Anyway, so Wolverine and Ogun have like a face-off, like Musashi and Ogun, but Ogun's like, I can take this bitch. And so they start fighting, and he does take that bitch. But we get a lot of fighting, and then Wolverine jumps off the building and runs away to get Ogun to leave Kitty alone and go. Meanwhile, Mariko and Akiko are racing out the building, and they run into Yukiko. Yuriko. Is it Yuriko or Yukiko? Yeah, it is. Oh, it's Yukio. And then they all run out of the car because it gets like blown up by the fat guy who's like still around. And so they're fighting. Kitty jumps down to help fight, and then her and Yukio like beat the shit out of him. And Kitty runs off to help Wolverine. Meanwhile, Wolverine's chasing Ogun. They're like fighting through like some pachinko parlor. That's what it was. And Wolverine gets shot, and there's a whole thing with like an elevator where he like tries to trick Ogun. And meanwhile, Kitty's dad is like freaking the fuck out, and Yukio's like, shut the fuck up. And then he like runs off to tell the police about like everything he's responsible for and Shigemitsu and everything. And Japanese people do not take kindly to white collar crime, not like in America where it's like hand wavy. So anyway, so Kitty goes to like help Wolverine, but then gets grabbed up by Ogun, who starts fighting with her again. And then Wolverine comes down, and like him and Ogun, they start fighting again, and Wolverine gets stabbed by Ogun, but then Wolverine's like stabbing the shit out of him, and they're both all bloody and staring at each other, and they go fight. And then Wolverine has to access his like berserker rage to finally beat Ogun, because he's been like holding back this whole time. And because he accesses berserker rage, he's able to defeat Ogun and break his mask off him and stand there. And then he's like, Kitty, come kill this motherfucker. And then Kitty's like, yeah, and picks up like the broken sword that Owen was using and runs up, and right before she's about to kill him, she starts crying and stuff. And then he's like, good, I'm glad you weren't able to kill him. I mean, the Kitty's still in there, and you overcome like all his brainwashing, because if you would kill him, that would like seal the deal, right? Because again, he's like trying to pass on his legacy, it seems, is what I'm kind of gathering from all this stuff through like the mental manipulation. Anyway, as Kitty and Wolverine start walking away, Ogun picks up his sword and runs at them, and then Wolverine turns and is like, phase. And so Kitty like phases, and Wolverine stabs Ogun, and Ogun slashes at Wolverine, and they both fall to the ground. But Ogun's dead, right? Because he stabbed him real good with his adamantium claws. And Wolverine, he's okay because he's adamantium bones. So he's got the cheat code to make sure that like it's all surface level damage, right? And then they talk about how Wolverine, mourns the death of like this guy who kind of like helped raise him and taught him so many things about being a samurai and fighting and a lot of his skills and being a warrior and all that stuff. And he like crushes up the mask and like dumps it over him, and is like, he calls him, it's like some bad translation, because at some point he calls him like, he says Ogun Sensei, which is like Ogun, my teacher. And then he says Chichi-san, and Chichi is like father. It's like a cute way of saying father. Oh wait, hold on. No, that's correct. That's my bad. No, that's right. Yeah, he calls him his father because the guy was like old when Wolverine was very young. Ogun found him and like taught him everything. Okay, no, I'm sorry. I misspoke. Anyway. Oh, no, I was right, because he says Shichi-san, which is correct. It's like father. And then later on it says, I respected him, Kitty. I loved him like a son. Like, what the fuck? So he loved him like a father. Like, yeah. Okay, so I was like, wait, no, Chichi-san's right. Anyway, I just want to point that out because I was reading it and I was like, those are opposite things. Like, the fuck? Anyway, no one's perfect. We all make mistakes, but it's fine. So then they go and get Papa Pride out of the prison cell, and Mariko and Wolverine are like reunited again, and Yukio like runs off because she's upset that Wolverine won't be with her, and he still is Mariko. There was like some conversation about it in this, but yeah, whatever. Kitty and her dad like make up and hug, and then they all go and then Akiko's like, oh, father, to Wolverine, I'm very scared of you. And Kitty's like, I was scared too. Let's go hang out and eat ice cream at Shapiro's. And Shapiro's is, Jewish name, but the guy running it is like super Japanese. Hilarious. And Mariko and Wolverine talk about how much they love each other and how they're like a cute little family. And Wolverine's like, hey, anytime you're ready, I'm ready to get married. And she's like, no, I got to prove myself. And then Wolverine thinks about how stubborn she is. And then you think Kitty's going to be okay? And they see her like eating like 17 scoops of ice cream. That wraps up the series. Pretty fucking good. All right. So go ahead, like, share, subscribe, comment, and I will catch you guys later. Bye.